Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and I have another DAC review for you, and even more in the pipeline, including this one here. This is a pretty high-end device. So this is the DC Elite, and I think this will be the most expensive dongle device I've ever reviewed on this channel. So I'm definitely looking forward to running this through its paces. But today, it's all about the more affordable Tanchjim Luna. And I don't know the price of this yet, but my guess is it's probably going to land somewhere in between $100 and $150, at least based on its features and specifications. So as usual, we'll go over what's included in the box. We'll talk about the specifications, the design, and then we will jump into the sound. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Now, as far as what you get in the box, you get the DAC itself. They've also included your typical short Type-C to Type-C USB cable, and then a USB Type-A to Type-C adapter. And again, I'm not exactly sure where this is going to land in terms of pricing, but if I had to guess, based on the specifications, features, and just its overall performance, I'm thinking it's probably going to land anywhere between $100 and maybe as much as $150. So let's go ahead and talk about the features and specifications. We'll go ahead and start with the outside of the device first. Now, on the top, we have a Type-C input. Then on the side is the volume rocker that also changes your gain modes when you press volume up and volume down simultaneously. So it does have high and low gain options. And then on the bottom, you have both a 3.5 single-ended output and a 4.4 balanced output. And then on the inside, we have dual CS43198 DAC chips, which that is a very common chip. It's the same chip that is used in the DTC 800, the AFU Snowy Night, the Alpha X1, which is my current favorite top dongle at $100, and quite a few other pretty solid devices. It can decode up to 32-bit PCM and DSD256. And as far as power and level output, the information I was able to find isn't very clear as far as the power output of the 3.5. But I did find some information that suggests the 3.5's level output is 1 volt RMS in low gain, and then 2 volts RMS in high gain. And then the 4.4 output gives you 2 volts RMS in low gain, and then 4 volts RMS in high gain. And then as far as the power output from the 4.4, I was able to find that that's 285 milliwatts at 32 ohms. Now, as far as the design, you get two options to choose from. You have the standard design, which looks similar to this as far as the shape and the color, but it doesn't have this custom embossed floral design that the limited Asano edition has. And I can see the appeal for those hobbyists that like this sort of thing, but personally, I think maybe the standard version probably would have been a little bit of a better fit for me. I will, however, say the build quality is very good. It feels solid and robust. The volume rocker is very responsive, but it doesn't rattle. And I've had some devices where the rocker actually rattles. It's kind of annoying, but this does not have that. And it's also very light and pocketable as well. And honestly, that is more important to me anyway. Now, as far as compatibility, I did test it with a few different sources, including my PC, my phone, and a laptop. And I basically had no issues at all. I just plugged it in and everything worked perfectly fine. I was able to play music straight away with no issues. And then as far as battery drain on my phone, I did notice a little bit of battery drain, but it really wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It basically was about the same as most of my other devices. And then one last thing is that the Luna is also compatible with the Tanchjim app. So that does give you another level of control. So you can use the app to change gain modes, choose between 5 different sound filters, adjust channel balance, but also it allows you to change DAC modes between Class AB mode and Class H mode. Class AB mode being the default normal mode, which is going to draw however much power the device needs from the source device in order to operate at max performance. And then Class H is going to be a more power efficient mode, and it will cause the DAC to use less energy when you're connected to lower power output devices like a cell phone. So that's kind of a cool feature. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the sound. So we'll go ahead and talk about its performance with IEMs first. Now, as far as drivability, of course, this has way more than enough power to drive any IEM. And I tested it with a pretty wide variety of IEMs ranging from budget stuff all the way to some of my higher end sets. So plenty of power for IEMs. But of course, the question is, how does it sound? Well, it's about as good as any of my other dongles around this price point, like the Snowy Night, the D10, the Tanchjim Space, and its presentation is linear, although it does have just a small amount of warmth to it. And I would say it's probably more focused on keeping things natural as opposed to delivering lots of detail, although the detail levels are good. Now, if we break things down a little further, starting with the bass, it has very good extension, dynamics, and again, this is with IEMs, dynamics are punchy. It has good bass texture. The mid-range does a pretty decent job at reproducing instruments and vocals naturally, and it also has nice vocal texture and just nice amounts of mid-range detail in general. However, they are maybe a little on the weightier side as far as the instrument presentation. Treble presentation is also quite natural sounding, and while I would maybe consider it to be a little on the smoother side, I don't feel like anything is missing as far as detail or micro nuances. So it's still natural, but generally resolving enough. Now, as far as technical performance, when I paired this with some of my more technical IEMs like the Afu Cantor, the Kuyas, and even my Divas, this being a budget device, while I did feel like it performed adequately, I could definitely tell that my higher end sets weren't necessarily performing at their best, because while I did feel like the detail levels were reasonable, the soundstage had good width to it, the forward presentation was a little more on the shallow side. And it does have forward depth, but it's just simply not going to be able to compete with some of my higher end devices. But again, still perfectly acceptable for this price point. And then as far as noise levels, of course, I tested it using my 2020 Andromedas, and it was basically noiseless. So I did not pick up on any hiss or any noise in the background at all in high or low gain. Now, in regards to drivability and use with full-size headphones. So something that I mention fairly often is how a dongle like this is great with IEMs, because generally speaking, IEMs don't require a lot of power to drive them well. But with full-size headphones, especially harder to drive full-size headphones, dongles may not be able to provide enough power to drive them to their peak levels. Not that you can't drive them loudly, you can a lot of times, but there might be significant loss in dynamics, transients, and just general detail, unless you have an entry or like a mid-tier or easier to drive headphone. And that's been my experience with lots of budget dongle style DAC amps, and that's really no different with the Luna. It works great with IEMs, but I did notice that dynamics and detail levels on some of my full-size sets just aren't quite to the levels of some of my more powerful devices. And that was using the 4.4 balanced output. And I've said this before as well. Obviously, I don't expect the average hobbyist is going to purchase this to pair with higher end stuff. But that's how I can kind of determine a device's limitation. So again, the areas that I felt the Luna struggled with were in bass dynamics and just general detail levels, again with full-size headphones. And also the sound seemed to be just a little flat in terms of dimension and forward depth and separation, especially again compared to some of my more powerful reference devices. But I did feel like it was giving me about the same performance I would expect to get from most of my other $100 dongles. Now, another thing to consider is that with non-battery powered devices like this one, they are relying on or are depending on your source device's output current, which with phones usually isn't very high. So when you're talking about power output with these kinds of devices, things can start to get a little bit tricky. Now, as far as comparisons go, when pairing the Luna with IEMs, it's basically about on par with every other dongle at $100, like the Snowy Night, the Space, K5, Dom Pro. So it is fairly competent for its price, but not quite to the levels of my three top dongles, again, within this price range. And that was further confirmed in my use when pairing it with full-size headphones. Again, great with IEMs, but I did notice that the dynamics and detail levels with some of my full-size headphones just weren't quite to the levels of some of my more powerful devices. All that said, if this does land where I think it will in terms of pricing, my personal opinion is that this is a very competent device, especially with IEMs. It's just not the absolute best. I would still probably recommend the XI1 DTC800, especially if you need more power, and the XI1 offers a few more features as well. So that concludes my review of the Tanchjim Luna. If you are new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. If you would please maybe take another second to comment on this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.